Hi, it's Pretend Art here with a new video. This week I'm drawing flamingos. Over on Facebook I asked people what kinds of birds they'd like to see me draw, and flamingos was one of the responses. For me, flamingos have always been just a confusing mass of feathers, legs, necks, and heads, and I wanted to capture that in this drawing. I thought that by using just black and white pencil for the main body of the flamingos would help add to the confusion of where does one flamingo end and another begin. I added a bit of color in the background with colored pencil at the end. I like the combination of pencil and colored pencil, but it can be difficult to use if they're in the same area of the drawing. Like if I had decided to make the flamingos pencil and colored pencil, that would have been difficult to do. But if it's two separate areas of the drawing, it looks really nice together. In some of the early parts of a graphite drawing, I'll sometimes use my paper stubs to lay down a fine layer of graphite. My paper stubs are pretty old, so they already have graphite on them. If you decide to do this, you need to keep a really light hand to prevent damaging the tooth of the paper. If you don't have any paper stubs, you can use Kleenex or Q-tips or paper towels for the blending effect. If you decide to use Kleenexes, make sure it's not the type that have the lotion on them. That will damage the paper. For years, when I first started using pencil, I would just use my fingers to blend. You should not do that. That will damage the paper, and the oil on your finger will leave fingerprints that the graphite will pick up on, and you'll have fingerprints all over your drawing. Graphite was the first medium I began using when I started getting serious about art. It's a cheap medium, so if you're thinking of starting art but you're worried about the expense, I'd definitely recommend using graphite. It's cheap, it's easy to learn, you can get the supplies just about anywhere. I just started with a regular HB pencil that I'd use for my schoolwork. One of the complaints with graphite is that it is reflective. That's just the nature of the medium. You'll get it no matter what. But to avoid massive shine, what happens with that is the pencil has damaged the tooth of the paper, so now it's all lying flat and you've polished the paper. To avoid doing that, the best way I've found is to start with one of the lightest pencils. For me, that's usually my 2H pencil or even an HB pencil. So start with a really light hand and lay down a layer of that pencil, and then build up with your 2B, your 4B, etc. until you get to as dark as you want. And if you keep a really light hand, you won't damage the paper at all, and you can layer as many times as you want, all the way up to the 8B, and you'll get really dark areas. That will also prevent the sort of speckled white look that you might get if you just started with the 8B, like if you wanted a really dark area. So you started immediately with the 8B, you'll sometimes get a grainy look, and that's because the 8B won't stay sharp enough to get into all the tooth of the paper. So by starting with one of the harder leads, the 2H or the HB, you can get into the tooth of the paper. So there still will be a graininess when you get to the 8B, but rather than seeing the white of the paper, you'll see the gray from the lighter pencils. So here I started adding the colored pencils to the background. I wanted to give it a sort of rainy or misty feel. I used a couple of pinks, but mostly cinnamon and flesh tones. I don't remember the exact pencils I used for this. I wound up having to go back over with some of my graphite pencils over the flamingos to add a bit more contrast in some of the feathers around where the color was. With the paintbrush, what I'm doing is using a bit of mineral spirits to blend the colored pencil. The mineral spirits don't blend the same way that the paper stumps blend graphite. What it does is that it dissolves the pigments into the tooth of the paper, so you're not left with the grainy look that you might get if you just use pencil by itself. And then I added a bit of pink around their feet to make it look like they were reflecting in the water. And then I had to go back over some of the feathers with my graphite pencils to bring them out again. And that is it for this drawing. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you soon.